Hey everyone, so today on the channel we are going to be taking a classic tiki cocktail and revamping it because honestly I just don't think it's really good. So today we're going to be taking a look at the classic fog cutter and how I think we can make some improvements to it and, well, we'll make it better. At least I think it's better. I'm Andy, this is Easy Tiki Drinks, let's do this. So as many of you know, I'm not a huge fan of the fog cutter. In fact, I did an entire video where I did a fog cutter 3 different ways. I did the classic fog cutter, I did a simplified fog cutter, and I did a kind of modern riff on the fog cutter. It's not really a fog cutter, it's just inspired by the fog cutter, and that's called the Lost in the Mist, and I'll leave a link to a video up here in the description below. Not only that, but in the past I've actually also done a hibiscus fog cutter, where I completely removed the gin and did a hibiscus steeped light rum. So I'll leave a link up here for that one, as well as in the description below. So honestly, I think the original fog cutter it's not good. I just honestly think it's a terrible cocktail. I'm gonna say it. It's just not good. I mean, let's go over the list of ingredients, right? It's 2 ounces of lemon juice, 1 ounce of orange juice, half an ounce of orgeat, half an ounce of cognac, an ounce of gin, 2 ounces of light rum, with a half an ounce of cream sherry float. Now I've made that. In that 3-way video, I made an original, classic fog cutter. It is overly tart. So I said, well, can we make a simplified version? My simplified version was better, but it was still kind of one-dimensional and pretty flat, to be honest. So I asked myself, can I make a better version? Can I make a fog cutter that includes the same ingredients, the same flavor profiles, but is more balanced and actually tastes good? And so that's what I'm gonna show you today. So let's see what we're gonna need to make my improved fog cutter. We'll call it that. To make my improved fog cutter, you are going to need unaged overproof Jamaican rum, lightly aged rum, gin, Amontillado sherry, orange Carousel, orgeat, acid-adjusted orange juice, aromatic bitters, and saline solution. So as you can see, some of the ingredients are a little bit different, but at the same point, they still stay within the same flavor profiles and just kind of amp everything up. Honestly, the original one falls flat, and so I wanted to give it more dimension. Now yes, some of these ingredients are a little bit more advanced, but I wanted to make a cocktail that I would enjoy drinking on the weekend for myself. And if you guys enjoy it too, great. I'd actually love for you to make this cocktail, drop a comment below, tell me whether you liked it or not, because if you don't like it, I'd love to hear why, and maybe I'll try your version of it. Let's get to building this cocktail, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the choices that I make and the flavor profiles that I'm trying to stick to. Sound good? Great. So we are gonna need a shaking tin for this one. Now, before I continue, because this has come up before, when I say a shaking tin, yes, this is glass. I'm simply using a glass cup because it shows what I'm pouring in. I've gone back and forth, and honestly, I just like how the glass cup looks on camera better, so that's what I stick with. But honestly, grab a metal on metal shaking tin because that's really what you're gonna need. So whenever I say grab a shaking tin and I don't have a shaking tin in front of me, I still mean go grab a shaking tin. Do as I say, not as I do. Anyway, let's get on this. Let's grab a shaking tin and get to building. To your shaking tin, add 5 drops of saline solution. 2 dashes of aromatic bitters. Now, as always, when we use a Japanese style dasher bottle, you're always gonna wanna double up those dashes because they're smaller. So when I say 2 dashes from a standard aromatic bitters bottle, what I really mean is 4 from a Japanese bitters bottle. 3/4 of an ounce or 22.5 milliliters of our acid adjusted orange juice. 3/4 of an ounce or 22.5 milliliters of our orgeat. Half an ounce or 15 milliliters of our orange Carousel. 3/4 of an ounce or 22.5 milliliters of our gin. Half an ounce or 15 milliliters of our lightly aged rum. 1 ounce or 30 milliliters of our unaged overproof Jamaican rum. Next up, we're gonna grab some pebble ice and add it to our shaking tin. Then we're gonna grab our shaking tin and give it a nice shake for about 5 to 8 seconds. We're gonna grab our Collins glass and we're simply gonna open pour in. We're gonna top it off with some more pebble ice. We're gonna add half an ounce or 15 milliliters of our Amontillado sherry and float it on top. For garnish, we're gonna go with mint sprig, a lemon wheel, and an orchid. And don't forget a surf-side sip straw. So there you have it, my improved, I guess we'll call it that, fog cutter. Let's give it a try. So, I mean, I love it. But of course I love it. I made it for myself. Or I made a version that I think is an improved version on a classic tiki cocktail. All right, so this cocktail is way more complex and has way more depth and is way better balanced than the original fog cutter. First of all, let's talk about some of the choices I made. I mean, obviously I'm gonna go with saline solution and aromatic bitters. For my aromatic bitters, speaking of which, I am going with the Bitter Truth Company aromatic bitters, but any aromatic bitters will do. And these two ingredients are gonna add both complexity and depth to the cocktail without really changing the flavor profile. Again, I say this all the time, it's basically adding salt and pepper to any meal. From there, let's talk about the citrus. The original one used a split base of lemon juice and orange juice. Lemon juice provides that acidity, and in the original one, 2 ounces provides too much acidity. So in my simplified version, I cut it back, but then the orange juice kind of just falls flat. So instead what I did was I used acid-adjusted orange juice. So this is gonna have the same acidity as lemon juice, but it's gonna bring that vibrant orange flavor that I want to this cocktail. On to the orgeat. Obviously that's gonna stay. I mean, it's kind of what makes this drink the drink. Without it, I mean, what am I gonna use for syrups, for a sweetener? And besides, it plays really, really well with the Amontillado sherry, which I'll get to in a minute, as well as the orange juice. Now, originally the cocktail only uses half an ounce, and that's nearly not enough to balance out the 2 ounces of lemon juice in the original cocktail. I'm only using 3/4 of an ounce of my acid-adjusted orange juice, so we're gonna bump ours up to 3/4 of an ounce. Now the orgeat that I'm using is the BJ Reynolds orgeat. I really like it because it brings a nice nutty flavor to this cocktail, which is really what I'm looking for. Now, take into account if you do use a homemade orgeat, it's a little bit more opaque. Your cocktail is going to be more opaque, more like a pale yellow as opposed to this kind of see-through, almost translucent yellow. But it really doesn't matter as long as the flavor is there. A curveball in here is kind of the orange Carousel. So for my orange Carousel, I use Grand Marnier. Now, this is not called for in the original recipe. However, brandy or cognac is. I honestly found, and I tried multiple different variations with cognac, and it just keeps falling flat. The cognac isn't showing through. It's not bringing enough punch to really punch through these other bold flavors. So I pulled a page from Paul McGee. Paul McGee makes his fog cutter and swaps out all of the orange juice, no orange juice at all, and instead uses dry Carousel. Now, I specifically said I wanted orange Carousel, and that is because Carousels have a brandy base. So it's a brandy that is then spiced, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those barrel notes from a brandy or cognac that I find in something like an orange Carousel. So a dry Carousel, Pierre Ferrand's, or a Grand Marnier will work perfectly here. I use Grand Marnier because it's a little bit sweeter, and there's a lot of flavors and a lot of bold flavors going on here, so I needed to balance it out a little bit more. If you use a dry Carousel, that's fine. It'll do absolutely fine. The cocktail will be a little bit more dry. So let's talk about the gin. Obviously the gin's gonna stay. Now the original recipe uses an ounce. I dialed mine back to 3/4 of an ounce because I didn't want it to overpower the cocktail. But I did want it to show up. So for my gin, I'm using Old Harbor, and what you're gonna want is any botanical gin, not something that's super piney. A little bit more floral works really, really well in here. Now let's talk about the rums. I did split the base on the rums with a lightly aged rum and an unaged overproof Jamaican rum. Why? Well, again, if I'm using just a light rum, it's not gonna provide enough punch or flavor that I want to elevate this cocktail and create complexity. But I did want something that's gonna kind of pair well with the gin and the Amontillado sherry. So I went with an unaged overproof Jamaican rum. Now, why not just go all 1.5 ounces of unaged overproof Jamaican rum? Well, I wanna be able to enjoy this drink and not pass out afterwards. So I toned down the booze, lengthened it out a little bit by adding 1/2 ounce of our lightly aged rum. Speaking of which, the lightly aged rum that I'm using today is from Shadow Ridge, but again, any lightly aged rum will do. The original cocktail uses a float of cream sherry. Cream sherry is actually just a combination of Amontillado sherry and PX sherry. PX sherry is very, very sweet, so it's essentially like halfway in between. I kind of take the cream sherry out and use just the Amontillado sherry. I don't want that added sweetness because I'd rather control that with the syrup and the orange juice. So instead, I just go with an Amontillado sherry, and I float it on top. Some people will mix it into their cocktail, and that's fine. I just like the presentation of it floating on top. That little darker head looks really nice on camera. That's really about it. But feel free to mix it into the cocktail if you want to as well. I mean, so that's really about it as far as like the flavor profiles that I chose and the choices that I made as far as the specific bottles. Now again, feel free to swap out any of these bottles for any other thing in the same category and you should be fine. I am gonna say that obviously if you swap something out, the flavor profile will change slightly, but it shouldn't be dramatically enough to be a different cocktail, so to speak. That's it for today's video. This is my ultimate fog cutter, improved fog cutter. It's my fog cutter. It's the Easy Tiki fog cutter, let's just say that, right? Even though it's not necessarily easy, it's a little bit more complex, but I think this is just a way better cocktail. That's it. If you did like this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, click that little notification bell, follow me over on Instagram and TikTok at Easy Tiki Drinks, subscribe to the Patreon, yeah, and that's about it. If you've got other videos that you would like to see, definitely drop them below or reach out to me on Instagram. Let me know because I'd love to hear what you guys want to see. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, take it easy.